Hi folks, I decided to do a Python tutorial for non-programmers as programmers tend to have a different way of thinking, and I feel the majority of the Python tutorials online are done by programmers, not qualified IT trainers. Just because you know about a subject does not mean you know how to teach it. In the corporate world, I've come across this time and time again. Training is a skill. To take something technical and make it non-technical. Technical people who know the subject tend to make assumptions because of knowing the subject very well, which leads to confusion and frustration by the person trying to learn it. They seem to have their own technical way of wording things, which to me just seems to overcomplicate what is actually going on, and they use words like concatenate, iterate and factorial recursion. The meaning of these words for beginners are irrelevant at this moment in time. Let's just talk English for now. The other thing that they do is tell you about all the commands and maybe show you some examples of the commands, but they never seem to put it in context in how to use the command in a working program. This is like an instructor bringing you into a shed full of tools. You want to start using the tools straight away and maybe start off with using a hammer to put a nail in a piece of wood. Then by using this knowledge, you can then move on to the next practical exercise. So what if the instructor decided that you just sit there while he drones on for the next half hour and tells you all the various ways to use a hammer? How about he gives you one example and then gets you to do it, then he shows you another way and gets you to do that? Like the old days where you watched the expert and then did what he did under his supervision. I want you, the viewer, to start learning and programming right away, and I'll tell you what is going on while you are running your program. That way you're not going to fall asleep, I hope. So this tutorial is going to be about getting you programming straight away from scratch, rather than hear me drone on for the next hour telling you all about the Python commands. So who am I? I'm not a programmer, but I am an IT trainer and currently learning to program in Python. This is why I'm doing this tutorial, as I know people get put off by these online tutorials that bore you to death or confuse you. My method is just to get you programming straight away, and we'll worry about the do's and don'ts later on. I'm going to do 5 tutorials, and if I get positive feedback and people like the format, I'll continue on and do more. Also, I'll be looking at showing you down the line how to compile the program that you have written into an exe executable file so you can use it on your Windows desktop. Now, I will assume that you have some knowledge of installing software on your Windows computer, as I will not be showing the Python software installation. This you can find on YouTube. You also need to know how to get a command prompt to make sure that Python is installed correctly. Let's get started. You need to download and install the Python program. Go over to www.python.org and download the latest version of Python. Click on Downloads and select the latest version, which at the time of this video is 3.12.4. Once you download it, run the installed program and accept all the defaults, but make sure that when you get asked to add Python to the path, please tick this box. Okay folks, so we'll assume that we have Python installed, and what we need to do is go over to the command prompt and just check that it is actually installed. So when you click on the search bar and you go to the command prompt, or if you type in search CMD and enter, it'll come up on the screen here, your command prompt window. And what you need to do is just type in py list and press enter, and you'll see that the version of Python installed, and this is a 64-bit version. So if that comes up, that means that it installed successfully. Well done. So you just exit out of the command prompt screen. Right, what you need to do now is you need to search for the idle program that was installed with Python. Now if I go down to the search bar here, I have it in my search, IDLE, and that's the idle program, which stands for Integrated Development and Learning Environment. And this is a command-based program, this shell here, which means that if you type in a command and press enter, it will run the command straight away. Okay, so let's start programming. And where you see the 3 chevrons, that's where you start typing. Now, obviously, when you're typing in a program, you have to make sure that you get the syntax correct, or you get the characters correct that you're typing in, because if you make a mistake, the computer will just read the mistake and then throw up an error. And I'll show you an example of this. So if you type in print, open bracket, quote marks, hello world, and we leave the quote marks off and we'll just put a bracket there and we press enter, you see there's a syntax error there, incomplete input. The reason why is because I forgot to put the quote marks at the end of here also, because if you're typing anything in quote marks, you need a quote mark at the start and the end. So let's type that command in again, print, open bracket, quote marks, hello world, quote marks, close bracket, enter, and there you go. It's run that program there to print hello world on the screen, and it's just done that. So what I want you to do now is to load up your idle program, pause the video, and type in the program that I've just put on the screen there, print, open bracket, quote marks, hello space world, quotes, close bracket, and see how you get on. Okay, if you typed in the program and it worked exactly the way it did for me on screen, well done. You've just written your first program. That's fantastic. Right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the same program, but we're going to change the wording in the inverted quotes. So instead of hello world, what we're going to do is type print, open bracket, quote, and say, this is my first program, close quotes, close the bracket, and then press enter. And you can see it's saying this is my first program. It did exactly what we asked it to do, to print this is my first program onto the screen. So again, pause the video and do the program that I've just done and see how you get on. Now the screen we're using here, the idle screen, is for typing a program and running it directly, and it'll run straight away, but it won't save the program. When we close this down, it will lose the program that we've just typed in. And you know, down the line when you start writing programs, you want to be able to save the program and store it on your local computer. So when you want to load it up again, you might want to load it up to run it, or you might want to load it up to edit it and change it. Then you want to be able to do that. So what we need to do is we need to be able to save that program. So we need to be able to write it into a file and then save the file. So to do that, what you do is you go to File and you click on New File. And this new box comes up and it has Untitled because we haven't given the program or the file a name at the moment. And what we're going to do is we're going to type in the program we've just written, but this time we're going to save it and then we're going to run it. So it's important that you save the file before you run it. It's something that Python expects you to do. Python will always ask you to save the file before you run the file. So let's type in the program we've just done. Print. this is my first program, close quotes, close bracket. And if you want, you can press enter. Now what we need to do is save this before we run the program, because it's saying it's untitled at the moment. So we'll do File, Save As, and we'll save it to whatever folder you want to save it to. We'll put it on my D drive, and we'll call it first program. And when you save a file, the extension is always going to be py for Python. So firstprogram.py, and then you say save. So you'll notice that the name now goes from untitled to firstprogram.py, which is the extension for all Python programs. So now we've done that, so let's run this program. So we go to run, and we go to run module, and there you go. This is my first program. So in this exercise, we printed our first program, then we changed the text in the program, and then we saved the program, and then we run the program. Now, before you do anything else, practice writing the program, practice saving the program, and practice running the program. And once you have that done, we'll then go on to part 2. So let's do another program. This time, because there is more than one line of code, we are going to be using the File New screen. So we go up to File New, and it opens up this screen here, which allows you to save your program. And currently it's showing untitled, which means that obviously this file has not been saved. So let's type in a program. So we type print, open bracket, inverted commas, Fred, inverted commas, close bracket. And we do the same thing again. Now, that's the program. Now, before we do anything and before we run the program, obviously we have to save the program. So what we do is we go to File, Save As, and we go down to D, and we'll call it Fred.py, and we click Save. Okay, so now we have Fred.py saved. We can see the name up here is changed to Fred.py. Once we check the syntax, make sure everything is spelt okay, and if we're happy with that and the file is saved, then you click run module, and there's your output. You have Fred 3 times. Pause the video and now type in that program, and hopefully you'll have the same result as me. Now at the moment our program only has 3 lines, and it's print Fred, print Fred, print Fred. And that's great if you only have 3 lines. But what if you had 50 lines and the name Fred has to change to John, and you had to go and edit each line of 50 lines? That would take you an awful long time to do that. Well, the good thing is there's a way around that with Python. So first what we have to do is we have to close down this file. So click X, and then we open up a new file. Now Python has a way of avoiding this repetitive task of typing by storing information in what is called a variable. A variable stores information that you give it. In the next program we are going to use a variable called name, and we are going to store the name Fred inside it. name equals Fred, and then we say print name. Okay, so again, before we run the program, we have to save the program. So we go to File, Save As, and we'll go to the D drive, and we'll call this variable.py, and we'll save that. Okay, so we're happy with that, and the file name is changed to variable. So what we do is go to run module, and there we have Fred again. But this time, if we want to edit the name Fred, instead of having to type Fred 3 times, or with the new name, say John, instead of having to type print John, print John, print John, what all we have to do is change the variable name to John instead of Fred, and we will save that again, File, Save, and we will run the program, and there we have John. And the reason why we didn't have to type it 3 times is because the variable name was equal to John. It stored the name John, and all we did is, instead of printing John, we printed whatever was in the variable name, which equals to John. Pause the video and type in the program, save it, and then run it, and see if you can get the same result as I did. Okay, so the next program we're going to be doing is going to be more like a database, like a staff database. And as you can see here, I've already typed in the program, and I've saved the program, and I've called it database.py. So if you go ahead and type in this program and then go to File, Save As, and save it as database.py and get to this screen, making sure that again your syntax and your characters, everything is correct, because obviously if it's not, there'll be a syntax error and it'll come up with a problem with the actual running the program. So what happens when we run this program, we go to run and we go to run module, and what we get here is like a database. We get the person's name, the address, and the telephone number, and that's fantastic. We've only 3 people here, but what again if we had 50? Now what's common to these 3 names? Well, the name John Smith, and then we have a different name Mary Byrne, and then we have a different name Phil Thomas. But what stays consistent is the address 3 Farm Avenue and the telephone number, because if they're staff and they all work in the one company, then the address and the phone number remains the same. Now if we had 50 people, again what we'd have to do is type this out 50 times, and again it's a bit monotonous. And what happens if the company decides to relocate to a different location and the address changes and the telephone number changes? Then you'd have to go into the database and you'd have to edit these 50 records and change the telephone number and change the address. Well, based on our last tutorial, variables come to the rescue, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to allocate the address and telephone number, which are the common things in the database here. So we type in address equals 3 Farm Avenue. Oh, we leave the bracket out there. And we type in telephone, telephone equals, again we have the inverted commas, and we do 496 4567, close inverted commas. Okay, so there are the two variables there. Address stores the information of 3 Farm Avenue, and telephone stores the information of the telephone number. So what we need to do now is change this to show the information. So what we'll do is we'll put in inverted commas there, and then we'll put a comma, and then we'll put ADDRESS address, because that's the variable. Okay, anything that's in the inverted commas is text. So if you want to type text, you put it in inverted commas, but the variable already has the information stored in there, so you don't put it in as text. And you do the same thing with the telephone number. So you create, there's a little space there. If you see, I made a little space there, and then you type in ELEP telephone. Okay, and we'll do the exact same with, we can copy and paste this information here. And just replace that information. Okay, so let's save that, and before we run it, let's just make sure that the syntax is okay. So we have address is address, telephone is telephone, and we have the person's name, then address is address, telephone is telephone, person's name, address is address, and telephone is telephone. Okay, that looks okay. So, and we've saved the file, so now let's go ahead and run it and see what happens. So we go to run module, and there we have it. The same information is printed as what we printed earlier on, but the information is stored in the variables here. So it just means that if this company had 50 people, 50 staff, and they relocated, and the address and the telephone had to be updated, by writing a program and putting the information in a variable, and then using the variable in the program, we don't have to keep retyping the information 50 times. We can just use the variable and put it in place of the actual information, and that makes life so much easier when you're programming. So pause this video, type in the program, and then save it as database, and then run it and see how you get on. The next command is the input command, and this is a command that waits for a response from the user. So the program here is one line which says input, what is your name? So let's run this program. Obviously we've saved it as name underscore input.py, and now we're going to run it. So if we run the program, it says what is your name? So if we type in the name John and we press enter, well, that's all it does. It doesn't really show us any response, or it doesn't print what you've just typed in. So let's improve on this program. So I think what we're going to need to do is use the variable again to actually add to this programs, and then be able to print out what's in the variable. So what we will do is, just before the input command, we type in the variable name, which is name equals input, what is your name? And then what we'll do is have another line, and we type print name. Okay, so we'll just save that, and then we'll actually run the program now. So it asks us, what is your name? So if we say John and we enter, it prints the name John. That's exactly what we wanted to do. Now you can go ahead and you can change the text here. Maybe what you'll say, change the text and say something like, where do you live? And then save it and run. Where do you live? And if you say Cork, it'll print Cork, which is great. But you have to remember that try and make the variable name relative to the question. So if it's a name, then the variable would be say name. If it's where do you live, so that's your location. So I would change the variable to say location to suit what the question is asking. And we'll save that. Now we'll run it again. And we'll say Cork. And it prints Cork. But you'll see the actual variable name matches what the question is asking, and that will come in handy later on when you're programming to keep the naming conventions very consistent. It's very important that you do that. So if you pause this video, type in the program, have a play with it, see how you get on, and change the wording around or change the question around, and have a play with it and have some fun. This is a more advanced version of the program that we just did. The actual variable name is very important here and something to be careful of. You can see here that the program is called football_team.py, and the variable name is football_team. You notice there's no spaces allowed when you make a variable name. You couldn't have football space team. It has to be football_team. And by using the underscore, you can actually get more specific with the name regarding variables, which is very important. When you start programming later on and you do more advanced programs, being able to have more specific variable names is going to be very beneficial to you. So in this program, similar like the last program, the variable is called football_team, and the input statement is asking what is your favorite team, and then it will print out the football team. So I have this file saved, so let's run it and see what happens. What is your favorite team? So if I say Man City and press return, you get Man City. So the print statement prints out what's in the variable. Remember, your syntax and how you actually type in the program is very important. If you make a mistake, the computer will pick it up and it'll come up with a red error saying syntax error. So be very important of that when you're typing, that you get your typing and your characters very, very accurate. So pause the video, type in this program and see if you get the same output, see if it works for you. Now, you can add to this program if you want. So here's another thing you can do. What if you want to ask two questions? Well, what you would do is you would put in another line and you'd say football team color equals input bracket quotes, what color is your team, close quotes and bracket, and then you would add in the actual variable to the print command, team color. So let's just save that now. So what we have here is it's asking us what football team, what's your favorite football team. It's asking us what's the team colors, what colors does the team use. and then obviously it's going to print out the football team variable, and then it's going to print out the football team color variable. So let's see if this runs. So let's run it. What is your favorite team? So Man United. What color is your team? Well, they're red. There you go, Man United and red. So again, pause the video, have a play around with this program and see how you get on, and experiment. Maybe add more questions and see how you get on. I hope you like this tutorial video. Please like and subscribe and comment below, and if I get positive comments from this video, I will be adding more tutorial videos to this, because it's specifically designed for people who are non-programmers.